continuous creation theory of a motion universe with matter formed out of motion and the cosmic revolutions as the cause of gravity. By Raphael Emmanuel Castel, May 2023. My theory embraces the infinite absolute space and time dimensions with the infinite motions occurring in space and the lone duration occurring in time. The theory embraces the motion transformation idea that indicates the continuous creation of the universe. The theory reveals the infinite revolutions of mass domains as the cause of the gravitation in the continuous mass energy creation as indicated by the motion transformation formulations. The theory rejects Einstein's curved space-time gravitation and space-time transformations, and also Minkowski's unified space-time idea, in their physics applications. The Genesis formula, along with the Galilei and Lorentz motion transformation formulations, indicates the infinite revolutions and the everlasting flow as the cause of the gravitation and the continuous creation process in the universe. Electromagnetic mass energy clearly gets continuously created in the universe. The JWST's discovery of galaxies at distances where no mature galaxies are expected according to the Big Bang theory, has clearly proven the Big Bang wrong. The universe did not begin in an explosive Big Bang. The universe always existed and is continuously created by the continuous creation of electromagnetic mass energy, the electromagnetic cosmic background energy radiation and the electromagnetic foreground mass created, which causes the continuing gravitation process. Basically, the following fundamentals are in the existence. Corporeal phenomena, abstract noumena. The perceived essences in the existence, 3D space dimension, 1D time dimension, motions, duration, corporeal kinematic forms, abstract ideas or thoughts. The perceiving essences in the existence, intelligence the body, intelligence the mind. There are two types of the existential realities. 1. The phenomena, what we perceive or detect in space, and 2. The noumena, what we think in our minds only. The space dimension is where we perceive the occurrence of the motion phenomena. The time dimension is where duration occurs without influence from motion or anything else. Motion is the corporeal motion. Duration is the abstract duration. Motion and duration occur separately in the separate corporeal space and abstract time dimensions. Duration passes in the time dimension as a moment of duration every moment of the time dimension. Duration is a lone vector in the abstract time dimension. Nothing affects the lone duration vector. Motion, however, has infinite vectors. So, we have the motion formations and transformations that define the material mass and energy in all the motion universe. The motion transformations are defined as x prime equals x times gamma, where the x prime and x are replaced with the velocity variables or the mass variables. Gamma equals the quantity 1 minus v over c is the Galilei linear velocity transformation factor, such that the Galilei velocity transformation yields the acceleration u equals c plus v. Gamma equals the quantity 1 minus v squared over c squared to the power 1/2 is the Lorentz hemispherical motion transformation factor, such that the Lorentz motion transformation yields the E equals mc squared formula. And gamma equals the quantity 1 minus v squared over c squared is the Castel spherical motion transformation factor, such that the Castel motion transformation yields the delta E equals m prime times the quantity at squared Genesis formula. Now, every mass domain has its infinite revolutions. The Earth, for example, has all the revolutions that can be applied to the Earth. First, the revolution of the Earth with respect to the Sun, then the revolution of the solar system with respect to the center of the mass domain where it was created, and so on, ad infinitum. All the revolutions of the systems over the Earth in the infinite hierarchy are applicable to the Earth as suggested by the Genesis formula that is applicable to all the mass domains in the infinite universe. Masses get created in the mass domains and the created masses inherit the infinite revolutions in their creation. Because there are no space transformations, the x prime and x space variables are replaced with the velocity and the mass variables to show only the motion transformations. The u prime and u and v velocity variables clearly represent motions. They are distinctly motion variables. The m prime and m mass variables are actually motion variables because they move. The e prime and e variables represent the connection to kinetic energy. The c is an assumed velocity motion constant. The t prime and t time variables are no longer shown since there is no time transformation. The separate duration occurs independent of the motion transformations. The motions and duration occur in unison but separately in their respective separate dimensions. We have the motion transformation formulations shown in the following table. The Galilei linear motion transformation, for the velocity transformation, u prime equals u times the quantity 1 minus v over c, u equals u prime over the quantity 1 minus v over c, U equals U prime times the quantity 1 minus V over C to the power negative 1, U equals U prime times the quantity 1 plus V over C, U equals U prime plus U prime times V over C, with U prime equal to C, U equals C plus V. For the change in mass, we have M prime equals M times the quantity 1 minus V over C, M equals M prime over the quantity 1 minus V over C, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 minus V over C to the power negative 1, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 plus V over C, M equals M prime plus M prime times V over C, M minus M prime equals the quantity M prime times V minus M prime times 0 over C, delta M equals delta P over C. The Lorentz hemispherical motion transformation, M prime equals M times the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared to the power 1 half, M equals M prime over the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared to the power 1 half, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared to the power negative 1 half, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 plus 1 half V squared over C squared. M equals M prime plus 1 half M prime times V squared over C squared, M minus M prime equals the quantity 1 half M prime times V squared minus 1 half M prime times 0 squared over C squared, delta M equals delta KE over C squared, KE equals MC squared, E equals MC squared. We have the change in mass and the connection to the classical kinetic energy. The square root indicates the hemispherical. The delta M change in mass here is half the possible change in 3D space. The Castel spherical motion transformation, M prime equals M times the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared, M equals M prime over the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 minus V squared over C squared to the power negative 1, M equals M prime times the quantity 1 plus V squared over C squared, M equals M prime plus M prime times V squared over C squared, M minus M prime equals the quantity M prime times V squared minus M prime times 0 squared over C squared, delta M equals delta M prime times V squared over C squared. For the change in mass energy, we have M equals M prime times the quantity C squared over C squared plus V squared over C squared, M times C squared equals M prime times C squared plus M prime times V squared, E equals E prime plus M prime times V squared, E minus E prime equals the quantity M prime times V squared minus M prime times 0 squared, delta E equals delta M prime times V squared, delta E equals M prime times the quantity AT squared. The focus is on the delta E equals M prime times AT squared Genesis formula, for the continuous creation of electromagnetic mass and energy. With the acceleration A, the revolutions are transformed into electromagnetic mass and energy. When the infinite essentially linear revolutions are applied to mass domains, gravitation occurs and transforms the linear motions into electromagnetic particulate mass and electromagnetic wave energy. The revolutions of the mass domain accelerate with the continuous gravitation acceleration because of the mass energy created. This is how the gravitational field occurs. The continuous creation happens in all mass domains in the infinite universe, and the observable electromagnetic motion universe expands in the infinite space dimension. The following figures illustrate the mass domain with the infinite revolutions vectors pointed towards the domain. The mass of the domain determines the strength of the gravitational field. Figure 2 illustrates the absorption of the revolutions into the mass domain and thus the thickened increase in mass energy. So, here is an animated view of the infinite revolutions vectors going into a mass domain. Imagine that the domain received its initial revolution as an independent domain when its mass domain was pushed out from its parent mass domain. The mass domain as an independent mass domain clearly immediately encounter all the revolutions imparted by the infinite hierarchical parent mass domains. The new mass domain receives all the infinite revolutions as a push from the very start, not a pull. When the mass domain receives the revolutions interact with the vectors in the mass domain and are absorbed and transformed, forming the new mass energy indicated by the Genesis formula. The vectors of the infinite revolutions clearly form the gravitational field around the mass domain. The gravitational field increases as new mass and energy get formed in the mass domain. Its new mass and energy are created out of the infinite revolutions. So, the mass domain moves with its infinite revolutions and create new mass energy, amplifying its gravitational field with the new mass, and the continuous creation process goes on forever and ever. The infinite revolutions are essentially the source of the new electromagnetic mass energy of the mass domain. Clearly, this is the most plausible origin of the gravitational field. This is not Einstein's space-time transformations. This is Castel's motion transformations in the absolute unchanging space and time, only motion and duration occur as the fundamental changes in nature. The Galilei and the Lorentz formulations, with now the Castel full spherical formulation, suggest the motion transformations that result in the motion formations. The basic intent of classical physics has been the motion transformations. Classical physics is about the motion formations and motion transformations. I can tell you where the ideas of the revolutions and the everlasting flow came from. But not here. The Galilei and the Lorentz transformation suggest that motion transforms into mass. But the Galilei and Lorentz transformations clearly do not indicate the full spherical transformation. The Castel motion transformation indicates the full spherical transformation of the gravitation motion into mass energy. The infinite revolutions of the mass domains provide the vectors for the gravitational field. But the gravitational field is determined by the mass of the mass domain. So, we measure the gravitational field of the mass domain and apply the same to the mass domain. When we apply the gravitational acceleration a to the mass domain m' in the Genesis formula, delta E equals m' times at squared, we get the delta E mass energy result. This essentially increases the mass energy of the mass domain. Whether there is the increase in the mass of the mass domain or not, there is clearly the increased delta E mass energy of the mass domain. The process of continuous creation from the revolution cycles and continues forever. The positive result is the increase in the electromagnetic mass energy of mass domains. There are the infinite revolutions of the mass domains and the everlasting flow into the mass domains. These motions, and by all the three motion transformation formulations, suggest the continuous creation of the universe. The acceleration in the infinite revolution suggests that the universe expands forever, with the electromagnetic mass and energy eventually flung into their infinite revolutions. A full spectrum of electromagnetic phenomena is produced in the universe. All the electromagnetic wave energies to the electromagnetic particulate masses, which include black holes. The full spectrum indicates all cosmological structures found in the universe. So, we will see recurrent cosmological structures of mass energy assemblies in the universe. The infinite revolutions provide all the field vectors for all the mass particles created and sustained in the universe. So, there are apparently all the necessary fields for all the fundamental mass particles. The infinite revolutions provide all the vectors for the motion formations in the space dimension. And so, the infinite revolutions and whatever occupies space are essentially the medium of motion. Thus far I hypothesized the following. 1. Motion comprises all the mass energy matter in the motion universe. 2. There are mainly the three motion formations and transformations in the universe in 3D space. 3. The Genesis formula reveals the continuing cause of gravity and the continuous creation of the universe, and all these because of the infinite revolutions of the mass domains. In conclusion, the motion formations and transformations formulations clearly indicate that matter is motion. There is the continuous creation of electromagnetic mass energy, the observable universe. The mass energy of all mass domains increases forever. Gravitation occurs because there are the infinite revolutions and there is the continuous creation of the electromagnetic mass energy of mass domains. There are the infinite revolutions of mass domains. There is the everlasting flow into the mass domains. Most questions in physics are answered by the continuous creation of mass energy in the mass domains. I'll talk on the theory of the continuous creation universe. Email me for arrangements at reacastel@gmail.com.